Chapter 16. It had been 2 weeks and Harper hadn't called Michael. Michael stopped by the mansion to see Emily. She was on her way out. This would be the last day, and she had to take her finals. "I can't talk now, Michael. I have to go. You know how it is. Can't be late for my finals. I'll drop you off at school. You can take the limo. After all, you are his wife. He made arrangement to take care of your father." She stopped and turned and looked at Michael. "I know, but I don't feel comfortable taking his money. I didn't say anything to the staff. Didn't want to confuse them because soon I won't be Mrs. Samsa." Michael opened the door for Emily. "I already told them. They will wonder why you are still staying in that small room when you should be in his bedroom. I want you to go there. Bring your things. If just for appearances." He entered the driver's side and started his motor and took off. "California Dreaming" by the Mamas and Papas played on the radio. "When is he getting the annulment?" "I can't afford it," she said, glancing at the mansions dotting the hilly landscape as she watched the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance and the clanging of the cable cars. "I don't know. I don't think he wants it. And I don't think you do either. Give him another chance. You don't know why he's the way he is. If you did, then you would go to him." What good would that do to go to him? He appeared to be inflexible about the virgin thing. What could be more embarrassing than to have a man tell you he didn't want you because you were a... She choked. "You know what he said. I don't feel like repeating it." The car came to a stop, and Emily hopped out after waving and thanking Michael. When she finished her final, she exhaled. Walking out of class, she glanced around to see Fiona leaving her class. She tried to walk fast to keep Fiona from catching up with her. "Emily? Wait." Emily slowed, and Fiona had to rush to catch her in the hall. They walked together and stood on the outside. "I guess your limo will be coming soon." "No. It won't," Emily said, her eyes looking down, her voice cracked. Fiona walked around to face Emily. "What happened? When I left you, you were smiling and acting as if marrying that gorgeous man was the best thing that ever happened to you in your life. It was for a second. And then it fell apart. My fairy tale life was just that, something you find in a fairy tale. It's not real." Fiona listened quietly. "He didn't want me. He said he didn't want a virgin." "Wow. What a bummer. Your Prince Charming isn't a prince after all. What is this world coming to?" "He tried to make up for it, but I couldn't swallow my pride. I love him, but how could he love me if he can't accept me? I've never been worldly. I don't know what to do. I never had a mother to teach me things, only a father who I had to take care of all my life. Let's go and have a beer. You'll get over him." Fiona put her hand on Emily's shoulder. "I know what you need. You need someone to make you laugh. Just wait until I tell you what Thomas did when we left you and Mr. Samsa. If that isn't good for a laugh, then nothing is." When they reached the bar, they sat at a table. Fiona made a gesture to them, and she brought them 2 beers. She held out her hand. "Do you see something that wasn't there?" "No. I wasn't paying attention to anything. I have an engagement ring. Thomas asked me to marry him," Fiona said. "But you just met him." "I know, but we had been seeing each other here for years." "And you just met Harper," Fiona said glibly with a closed smile. "But I knew him, the kind of man he was. Elizabeth would talk about him all the time. Thomas gave me a ring. Where's yours?" She threw her hand up so Emily could see it. Emily glanced down, and she looked up at Fiona. Her eyes teared. "I'm sorry, Emily. I do that all the time. I find a friend and I say things I don't mean." "Don't worry about it. I'll be okay," Emily said, turning to wipe a tear away. "No, you won't. You love that man. He should have given you a ring. We're getting an annulment, and I don't need one." "It's not that you don't need one, you should have one. With a man that rich, you can get the biggest diamond, and then you don't have to worry. Did you consummate? No, we didn't. Emily's eyes looked down and then up to face Fiona. I didn't marry him to get a ring or anything. I wanted to be with him. There is something so warm and yet so cold about him. I wanted to bring out that warmth in him. I need him and he needs me. We are two lost souls. I can feel his goodness. We won't be the same without each other. If you feel that way about him, then tell him. It may be too late. Some of this might be my fault, Emily said with a sense of sadness to her voice. It's never too late. I had a good feeling about you and Harper. Do you want another woman to have him? If he is a good man, then fight for him. Go wherever you need and make him see that you and he belong together. He's still married to you. Make it hard for him to walk away. Make it hard for anyone to take him. She wondered if she could do that, considering how she was the one who refused to sleep with him. It was her pride that had been hurt. How could she explain that to anyone? When Fiona and Emily parted, Emily had a new outlook on life. As Emily was entering the side of the mansion, Elizabeth was walking up the steps to the door. Chapter 17. When Emily walked in the door, she passed through the hall, and the butler had answered the doorbell. The wrought iron door was open, and standing at the door was Elizabeth. There she is. I want to speak to you, Emily. The butler stood aside and let her walk in as Emily was crossing to go to her room. Emily met her in the foyer. I heard you and Harper was married, so I came over to wish you well. You never had good wishes for me, why do I think you would now? Let's get this out on the table, as my father would say. I intend to break up your marriage to Harper. I thought you were marrying a friend of Harper's. Those were just rumors I spread around to make Harper jealous. You know, when he married you, it was because he thought I was getting married. He just married you to get back at me. Elizabeth made a gesture with her hands, and Emily saw she was still wearing the massive engagement ring. Then Elizabeth looked at Emily. I see you are wearing the same clothes. Are you too stupid or simple to spend some of that money? And where is your engagement ring? She grabbed Emily's hand, and Emily jerked it from her hand. Please leave, Elizabeth. I have things to do. Elizabeth glanced around. Where is Harper? She started walking up the stairs, and Emily stood in her way. I asked you to leave. Don't let me have to call someone to throw you out. This is my home, not yours, and Harper is my husband. I suggest you find your own, because he isn't going anywhere. Elizabeth glanced up and down at Emily and said, Tell Harper I'm waiting for him. And she shot her eyes in Emily's direction. I intend on getting Harper back. I don't care what I have to do. Don't get in my way. Don't you get in my way? You might now recognize what I've become. Especially since I'm pregnant. With those words, Elizabeth huffed and jerked around and left the house. Emily had been shaken by Elizabeth, but she wasn't about to let her know. For the first time, she feared losing Harper. She didn't know why she said that she was pregnant. She wasn't even close. How can you get pregnant if the man you love won't get close to you? Emily looked at the stairs, and she glanced at the hall to her room. The servants had been wondering why she never slept in Harper's room. This was an excellent time to look for reasons for his dislike of virgins. She climbed the stairs. It was a slow ascent up. Still trying to decide if she should poke around his things. No one liked anyone that would snoop. But this was important. Her life and unborn children depended on it. She smiled when she thought about what she had said to Elizabeth. That got on her nerves, Emily murmured as she chuckled. She opened the door. She expected it to be locked. Standing around, she tried to think where he would hide something. She opened his closet, and there was nothing but expensive suits and a tux. But they appeared to have been replaced with rows and rows of jeans and t-shirts. Maybe a few leather jackets. Nothing revealing by looking in his closet, she thought. But what did she expect? What did she think was wrong with him? She didn't find any handcuffs or riding crops as Stanley had directed her to look for. He appeared to be normal. Then she saw a dresser. Maybe he would keep the handcuffs in there. She had to be careful not to make a mess, so she carefully pulled open the dresser drawer, and in it was a picture of his mother. She picked it up and looked at it. The picture was of a beautiful young woman with dark hair about Emily's age. And next to the picture was a small box. In the velvet box was a ring. Under the box was a diary. It was Harper's diary. She was bewildered. She knew in the journal was the key to whatever was Harper's problem. Reluctantly, she opened the journal and skimmed it. It started when he was in elementary school, up until a month ago. She knew the answers were in the back. Not wanting to invade his privacy, she would read the recent entries she opened. Day 1. I'm married to the most beautiful woman in the world. I'm going to give her my mother's engagement ring. Emily gasped and looked at the picture. It was indeed Harper's mother's ring. She closed the book, dropped it down in the drawer. She placed her hand to her mouth. She felt so shame, and then she took a heavy breath and opened the book again. She had to find out what, if anything, was his problem. But then she heard the knob turn, and the maid was standing behind her. I'm sorry, Mrs. Samsa, but I heard someone in here. I will be moving my things in this room. Mr. Harper is on a business trip, and he'll be arriving soon. I want to clear away some of his things to make room for mine. She dropped the journal and closed the drawer. Can I help you with something? No. I think I can manage. The maid turned and walked out, closing the door behind her. Emily breathed out and walked from the room to get her few clothes and bring them upstairs. She didn't know when Harper would return, so she took Michael's advice. If but for the sake of the servants, she would put on this farce as if they were a loving couple. When Emily was getting into Harper's bed, Harper was climbing into his truck with Nero and Angela, driving them and Nero's pack back to the Rusty Nail. I guess I should thank you, Nero said, looking at Harper with a solemn face. That's up to you. What goes on in this town? Too much, Angela said, looking at Harper and then turning to Nero. Whenever there's a killing, we are the first to be rounded up. The humans know it's not our doing, but they use us to cover it up anyway. We have had 2 female bodies found within 2 years. These women are from another county, and one is from another country. The humans can't get enough women to come here and marry them, so they get them through dating sites or newspaper ads. It doesn't help with the kind of things that goes on in your bar. You have these matches and kill your own. He turned and glanced at Nero and Angela. I'm building this town and I want peace here. Not some half-crazed werewolves and humans running around killing. Can I count on you to change your behavior and the behavior of that pack? If you don't, I will use whatever resources I have to get rid of those who don't want to comply with my rules. They rode back to the Rusty Nail in silence. When he stopped the truck, Nero and Angela stepped out with the remaining werewolves. Nero walked around to the window. We can live by your rules. But the humans are another thing. Once they find out what you are, they will try to hunt you the same way they hunted us down. There are only 6 male werewolves left, and we don't know if there are others. We haven't the resources to travel. There's no work in this town. Most of us hunt and live out in your woodlands. Then you will have to make sure that the humans never know what I am. I need time to build this town. I'm bringing my wife here after my home is built. They are working on it now, and should be completed shortly. Nero felt relieved that Harper would be married and wouldn't be a threat to him, but he didn't know of the threat the sheriff had posed to him. Harper knew that it was because of the sheriff that the werewolves were taken into custody. He wasn't sure that there was even a woman's body. It could have been something made up. Backing out of the gravel road in the dark, he pulled into the main path. It was a 2-lane blacktop road and was as desolate as where he chose to build his home. It felt like home. For some reason, he had gotten used to the idea of living in this wooded area, and he welcomed solitude. What would Emily want? He had forgotten about Emily, but she was all he thought about driving up to his unfinished property. As he neared the gate, the builders had gotten farther along than he had imagined. Everything was coming together. The fence that surrounded his property was standing all except the large gate he had ordered from San Francisco but hadn't arrived. He drove straight through to the house, which appeared almost ready to move into. Stepping out with a sense of peace and satisfaction, he opened the door. The outside had been completed, and the only thing left was for them to do the inside. Harper curled up in a corner thinking about Emily. It was the first time since he left home that he had to think of her. She was a beautiful girl with long strawberry blonde hair and green eyes. Full lips naturally red. Remembering her as if seeing her again nude, he saw her full breasts. Harper made up his mind that he would have to tell her, and then let her decide if she wanted to stay married to him. And contrary to what Emily thought and the impression he gave her, he did want her. He wanted to be her first and last in this life. Leaning his head down to rest and enjoy his thoughts of Emily, he heard voices. It had been a long day, and he would stay in his new home and sleep. It was too long a drive to go to the next town for a hotel. As he was closing his eyes, lights from flashlights were trained on him. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" 4 humans were standing over him. "My name is Harper Samsa, and I own this home." Then as he stood, 2 men stepped aside to let the 5th man into the middle of them. "It's Harper Samsa, all right. What is this about? You've come into this town and upset the balance and screwed with the stability of our human population. There aren't but a few of us. You have to make your decision. Are you a human who's willing to get rid of those creatures? What have they done to you? They stand between us having female companionship. I wasn't sure whether you locked up Nero because you wanted to have her for your own, but now I'm sure. We don't want those shifters but for one thing." The sheriff smiled a lewd, nasty smile. He let out a snicker as he turned to the other men, and they began to laugh too. "Killing them at one time would have made those female shifters suspect us, and who knows what they would have done. But killing them one at a time, getting rid of the evidence like we did all the others, no one, not even the cat-loving and dog-loving humans around here, would know what really went on." "But I know," Harper said, staring down at the 4 men. His eyes blazing gold. He raised his head and howled, and the men took off in different directions with the sheriff leading the departure. They rushed through the door trying to get to their truck. Within minutes Harper had shifted into his wolf, and he sprang after them, taking down the sheriff, who had ran between 2 large pine trees and tried to hide behind them. Harper reached him, came behind his back and attacked him with his muzzle with a pair of razor-sharp fangs. He crept up behind the kneeling sheriff to deliver the deadly blow. Harper tore at his neck and he bled out. When Harper looked up, the 3 men were in their truck trying to start the motor. The driver had left on the lights, and because of a weak battery it wouldn't start. A back window had been placed down and it couldn't raise. When Harper spotted the window and made a leap for the 4 men, they took off running. Harper ran after each one. They had guns but were too scared to discharge them. As Harper was cleaning up the bloody scene before the workmen came the next morning, Emily was waking up and making a decision about Harper.